can see that I've got my giraffe picture. So here's my photograph of the giraffe. Shh, nobody should be talking right now. So this is the photograph of the giraffe, and you can see that parts of it have already been shaded in. Now this is a pretty big drawing, so it's not going to fit under the camera completely, so I'll just hold it up so you can see. You guys have probably seen this sitting up on the board for a while. I started it last year as a demonstration piece, and I didn't finish it, so I'm going to use it to finish today. So there's a whole bunch of different techniques that you can use for shading, and you can see that I have a lot of different fur techniques going on in here, which is important because you can see that parts of this picture here that you can definitely see all the fur, but it's rather fuzzy, and so I have to match that different technique. So you can see there's a couple areas like right in here, here, and oh, let me move that up a little farther. There's quite a few areas down in here that are not covered in. So here's the actual photograph. Do you guys have a preference of which area I show you? You guys, it's like viewer's choice. No, you guys don't care? No. All right. Well, I will pick, maybe I'll just finish this area right in here. So because I've been sort of drawing all over on this drawing, I'm actually going to use another piece of paper to put down so I can put my hand on top without smearing the graphite underneath. This is important because some of you guys might be working up at the top of your picture and then decide to move down low in a different area. If that's the case, you're going to want to have a piece of paper, and I have scratch paper, that you can go ahead and put down, and then you can keep your hand on top of the scratch paper, and that will keep your graphite from smearing underneath. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and work in this quadrant. So I'm going to put the picture right there. So I'm going to work in this area in here. Move this on top. There we go. Beautiful. And there are a couple different techniques, but the best technique for covering in a lot of area and getting a really smooth gradient going is we're going to actually want to go ahead and do a tissue rub, but it's a little bit different than the way you guys did it before. We are actually going to use small pieces of paper and some toilet paper. So I'm looking for my 6B, or at least my darkest mark pencil. So I have an 8B in my box, so that will be plenty. And I'm going to take out one of these little papers. So I keep tons of paper cut up in this little container up here, and that's for doing this technique. Now when I'm about to do this technique, should I stick my picture, should I put this little piece of paper on top of my picture? Well, I heard a couple no's, but the rest of you look at me blankly. So if I do this, I'm going to start scribbling on this. What's going to happen to my paper underneath if I do it on top? Yeah, it's going to get marks everywhere, and then when I try to shade it in, it's going to look like poop butt. And it's not going to be pretty. So what I want to do is I'm going to want to take my paper off to the side, and I'm going to do scribble on it over here. Now, you will get marked down for marks in your paper that show up, because that's part of craftsmanship, of keeping things neat. So it is important that you try to avoid that at all cost. So I'm going to take my dark pencil, and I'm going to go ahead and scribble on this piece of paper. And I'm going to create a nice platform here for my tissue rub. So I'm just going to take a small piece of paper towel. I don't need tons. We're not doing a wad. One little square or two will do. And I like to wrap it around my finger because I feel like I have more control. Whatever method is most comfortable for you. I'm going to rub in circles. This is very important, circles. And I'm going to look at the area on my photograph, in this area in here, and I'm going to start by gently rubbing in circles to shade this in. Now there are some areas where you might have to rub a little up and down, but then you should blend the edges by going in circles. This is going to create a nice smooth base to do some shading work on top of. Now for some of you, you might have a blurry background. This is a really good way to fill in your background. If your background is really black, like super black, you're going to want to do a soft tissue rub first. And then I have what's called Seriously Hot Salsa. And the Seriously Hot Salsa is basically powdered graphite. Now, powdered graphite is really strong. It will take your whole picture and make it black very quickly if you're not careful, which is why you don't get to go play with it by yourself. When it's time at the end, then you can take a little bit of the powdered graphite and you'll do the same thing where you're rubbing circles to blend in. Now I had very little powdered graphite on my tissue, but it got dark very quickly. This is really strong, which is why it's towards the end. You can use the traditional method first. Now you might need to build up layers where you're actually using this and putting the dark spots in before you do any other marks. The other thing too is blending stubs are great for doing similar things if they're really dirty. You can actually take the blending stub in some smaller areas, and because it's dirty, it will have like a tissue rub effect too. The nice part is you can also draw with the blending stub. And in these areas right here, all of this was drawn in with a dirty blending stub. So when I looked at my picture and I saw there were a lot of dark marks, all I did was take the corner of my blending stub and I worked to create little marks that were similar, and I just sort of twist it and turn it to get that mark. And then if my thing needs to be a little dirtier, I might just rub it over here, la, 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 la. And now I can come back and I have a little bit more ammunition for drawing. But I'm going to focus on this area right here, so I'm going to bring this down farther. And I'm going to look really carefully at my photograph. And the reason I decided to pick this spot in here is see how it looks really difficult because there's all these hairs sort of coming straight at you. What you have to do is notice that like down in here is where this area starts, and there's sort of a circle area where this is all coming from, and then everything radiates out from that circle. So you have to start looking really carefully at the patterns that you're going to see in your picture. A lot of drawing is about being observant. So I like to work a lot of times with a 4B when I'm drawing because it's kind of that midway soft. It's a really good pencil for just some basic midway values. But unfortunately, my 4B has disappeared, so I will stick with what I got. And I'm going to look at how all of this sort of fades in. So I'm noticing that everything fades out in a radial pattern. So I'm going to start doing some sketchy marks radiating out from this point here. This is my center point. Now the stuff that I'm radiating out looks pretty messy right now, right? The most important part of this is the direction. You can have the wrong value in a drawing. You can have the completely wrong color. What you can't have is the wrong shape and the wrong direction. That's what you need to make sure that everything looks as realistic as possible. So I'm putting in my base here, and I'm actually going to use the blending stub on this to help smooth it out, and the eraser as well to give the look of hair. So I'm going to take the smaller blending stub, and up at the front there are 2 filters, coffee filters filled with blending stubs of different sizes. For some of you, you're going to need a super tiny blending stub. I have ridiculously small ones put away. So I have every blending stub size for your needs. So I'm going to once again be very cautious and look at what direction this is going. And I'm now going to rub these lines I made going into the same direction. Part of the reason for doing this is as I do this, I'm going to get different grays in here. Can you see how there's some light grays, there's some dark grays? That's going to help me for when I want to erase and add in my lights. Now you don't always have to keep your drawing like this. You can turn your drawing around as you're working, whatever's most comfortable for you. Sometimes I'll have my drawing completely upside down, sometimes I have it at an angle. Is whatever helps me work the best. There is no right or wrong with art. Alright, so I'm going to get that in there, and I'm going to soften these just a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to take the erasing pencil. So remember, you guys can check these out with your ID badges. And I'm going to look around here at these white marks. And some of the marks actually look like lines, and then some of them have sort of like a circular shape to them, right? Can you guys see that sort of circular shape right in here? Alright, so I'm going to start with some of the ones that look a little bit more like lines, and I'm going to erase out in that direction. And the eraser pencil is like a pencil, so the more pressure you use, the more it's going to erase. The less pressure, the less it's going to erase. So, and you can always build up your marks. So I'm going to do that. And now I'm going to come in here and I'm really going to examine this shape. And I'm going to sort of sketch that in here with my eraser. When you're on video, you have to have fun. Okay. Alright, so I did put this little section in. What do you guys think I need to do to make that look more like the photograph? Blend? Okay, what should I blend? Should I just like rub all over it? Yes. The inside darker, yep. So before blending is true, that we do need to do that, but we need to add some dark value to it before we blend. So I'm going to come back with my pencil, and the dark value is in the middle of these little circles. So I'm going to come in. What's a technique that I could use from our value chart to add some value in this area? Would stippling work in this area? Yeah, I could definitely use the technique of stippling. So I could stipple some of this in here. So now that we have that in, we have this contrast between light and dark. It looks kind of funny at the moment, right? So that's where blending comes in handy. There are different ways you can blend. There's blending with rubbing. There's also blending with dabbing. So I'm going to actually stipple with the blending stub. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stipple on top of this area. And sometimes you have to give it a little push as you stipple, so you know, a little moving around. Okay, what do you guys think I should do next? Does it look like the picture yet? What should I do next? So down here? Okay, but what about we're just looking at this area right now, right in here. I do agree, I do need to go down and make it lighter down there. That is correct. So more dots. Okay. What else could I do? Do these two match? Do they look the same? No, I see you guys shaking our heads. So you know it doesn't look the same. It's okay to guess what you could do, because if you make a mistake, what do? We don't even have to erase it, we just fix it, right? So you are taught most of your life that making a mistake is bad. That making mistakes doesn't get you anywhere. The way you learn how to do things is by making mistakes. Because if you don't make the mistake, you can't learn what to do and what not to do. And you have to be okay with making mistakes. The reason why most people get super freaked out in school, they're afraid of making a mistake and they're afraid of getting in trouble. They're afraid of looking stupid. I'm telling you right now in this class, you can make as many mistakes you want. I don't consider you stupid at all. I actually think that a person who's willing to make a mistake and say, whoop, I made a mistake, that is more powerful to me than always being right. I make mistakes all the time. Nobody's perfect. So don't be afraid, my friends. What do you think I could do next? Yes.
You make the dots go more towards the dark spot you get.
Okay, more dots towards the dark spot. Okay.
Like with the eraser and stuff.
Oh, okay. So you want me to actually use the eraser now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. And should I stipple with the eraser or should I erase like back and forth? Okay, let's try stippling with the eraser. That's great. Now when you stipple with the eraser, I'm going to be up front. You can't just put the eraser down and expect it to erase like dots. You actually have to kind of push a little bit as you put it down. So it's not quite like with stippling with a pencil. So I'm going to come back in and I'm going to lighten up some of my little areas here. And I'm going to do a stipple eraser technique. Okay, how does that look to you guys now? Better? Should I do more to it? Don't be shy. So overall, if you're looking at this, can you see how it's starting to come together with all of the different fuzz and the hairs? So like even down in here, you can see that not all the hairs have been completed, right? It's just the base layer. And even up in these areas, sometimes you'll lighten something and then you'll be working and you'll come back and go, oh, that's not very bright anymore. And you're gonna have to bring back the highlight. So we're gonna go ahead and bring back some of the light spots by the lips, because I remember Walter saying the lips needed to be a little bit snazzier here. Now, am I erasing straight? You guys, can you see what I'm doing with the eraser? I'm making like little X's. So I'm making like little X's. So here I'm going to show you on this spot here, even though I'm not quite wanting to do hair right there. If I'm right here and I'm erasing, see how I do like a flick to my wrist and it went from thick here and now it's thin at the end? That's by using more pressure at the beginning and less pressure at the end. So think of it like flicking your wrist. And then when I want to make hair, I overlap them in little X's. Can you see that? And that's the technique for getting some hair. So, and here, look at that. I didn't want that there, and now it's gone. Is there any other part of the giraffe that you guys want me to demonstrate for you that you think would be helpful for you? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is open this up, Mia, to anybody who wants to have me show how to do part of your picture. So if you have a part of your picture that you think you'd like me to demonstrate, let me know. Yeah? All right. Okay, so we're going to move the giraffe out of the way. Put giraffe right here for the moment. Look at all this fun stuff here. All right, and it looked like you had something, you want me to do something on yours? Jasmine, okay, so I'm just gonna actually take your drawing. All right, so which part of your drawing do you want some help with? Like this right in here? Okay, so Jasmine's picture, you can see she has a lovely deer here. And what she's really looking at is, notice how this hair down in here is long hair? This is important. When you're looking at your animal, you need to know whether it's long or short hair. And you want to really follow the direction of the hair. So what I'm going to do is I would start off with a tissue rub base. So I'm going to take my pad of paper here. And right in here we're going to make a deer. All right. So I'm going to start tissue rub base. And then I'm really gonna look at how this hair is falling. So like right in here, there's some dark spots. Can you guys see that okay? And then it sort of fades into gray and has these lighter spots. So what I'm gonna start doing is looking at this defining shape, and I'm gonna create, just like I did with the eraser, strokes with my pencil that are overlapping and are creating sort of this X shape, and I'm gonna follow the flow of the hair. So I'm gonna check and see like which direction is the hair going in. And right now I'm mostly putting in the darker hair at the bottom because that's gonna help define this little patch of hair. I'm gonna take the blending stub now, and I'm gonna blend this up into the gray, being very mindful of, once again, the direction of the hair. So remember I said sometimes I turn my paper all around. So here I'm gonna turn my paper so I can keep that direction easier for me. This is gonna create different layers now of gray by my blending. Okay. And I still have, so see I still have my darker marks here, which I started with, which is good because see how there's darker marks down here at the bottom. And now I have about 3 different shades of gray in this area. I'm gonna go ahead and take my eraser pencil, and I'm gonna start by adding in now some of the lighter hairs. And I'm gonna be doing the push and pull method. So when I'm pulling, I'm erasing because I'm pulling things forward. When I'm pushing them, I'm blending them and making them go back into space. So like everything you learn, there's different vocabulary. So there's different vocabulary for math, English, and of course the fabulous world of art. So I'm once again looking at the direction. I'm crossing over the hairs, but for the most part these hairs are pretty straight. He's well groomed, he combed this morning. It's not like a lion's mane, which is all over the place. So I'm gonna try to keep these fairly smooth. And now I'm gonna come back with the blending stub, and I'm gonna go ahead and just softly blend the edges here of where I can see gray and white. Okay, and then I'm gonna take a slightly less soft pencil. So I think I'm gonna grab my 2B. To be or not to be, that is the question. All right, and now I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna add some of these lines. And can you guys see there's these little gray pockets in between the erasing marks? Okay, so that's where I'm gonna look for adding some of these hairs. And I need to make the hairs long. So my strokes with my pencil need to be long strokes. Now, you may not have a deer, but you might have something that has hair that's similar. So this is a technique that can be used on medium length hair, no problem. Okay, and once again, because that's standing out quite a bit, I'm gonna take the blending stub and I'm gonna push it back into space a little bit. And I'm just gonna rub right on top of that and push it back. Now the last thing I'm gonna do is one more time take the erasing pencil and bring back some highlights. And this is where I'm gonna be really mindful of exactly where are those highlights and copy them as best I can. Now you guys have a little bit more of an advantage than I do with starting off because I've asked you to outline the shapes of where your value changes to different grays. Doing all of that's actually going to make this process much faster. So there you can see would be how to do sort of a medium length hair. Does that help you okay, Jasmine? Okay. All right, who else has something they want me to demonstrate? You're welcome. Okay, bring your photograph up. Okay, and which part do you want?
Like around here, because it's more faded.
Okay, so
It's like defined.
perfect. Okay, so this is a really good example of something that's blurry, right? So because when the person took the picture, they focused the camera right on the face of the baby sloth. All of the other areas behind it blurred out. And so we can see that there's different value, but it's a very soft value. So that's a really good technique to show. So this is where I would use almost completely tissue rub. because that's where I'm really going to be able to get this value build up. So I'm going to start with getting this really nice and dark. So I'm scribbling again on my little piece of paper. And I'm going to start with, so I'm going to work like right in here because there's some really dark, there's some medium, and there's some light value, and I think that's a good area to kind of focus on. So I'm going to start with my basic tissue rub. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to build up my layers a little bit. Now, once you get a nice tissue rub down, you can also use the side of your pencil. So remember that other technique we learned for doing a tissue rub? So you can use the side of your pencil. The trick with this is you want to be very close together. So see how my strokes are staying very close so that I get a nice smooth gradient. And I'm going to use this so I can control the shape a little bit more of where the dark spot is. So I'm kind of working on getting that. And I might cross over just a little bit. I want to keep this as smooth as I can. I would then switch over to the blending stub because I can actually use this to get a nice soft blend. And because it's pointed, I can get a small shape a little bit easier than I can with the toilet paper. One of the things I want to kind of caution you guys against is don't use the very tip of the blending stub. It's actually meant to be used on the side like you do with the blending of the pencil, not straight on like an actual pencil. I'm going to go ahead and get that nice and soft and blended in. And the pencil gives it just enough of a texture that you get kind of that illusion of hair, but you're not getting super detailed hair like that you would if you were just using like the side of your pencil straight up without that tissue rub underneath. Alright, so I have a shape that's similar. This is up in here is still a little bit darker. So I could actually, if I wanted to use my blending stub, I could rub my blending stub even on my little piece of paper. And then there is a lighter area like right up in here, and if I find that I've gotten a little bit too dark, I could just very gently take the eraser. Let's see, you guys have a right eraser in the box. And there is a trick that you can do with a regular eraser that actually is kind of fun. So I have this small eraser here. I can actually put the eraser down, so see it's flat, and I'm just going to twist it. And if I use a lot of pressure, it'll erase really thoroughly. If I use just a little bit of pressure, it's going to erase just a light amount. And see how once I do that too, it creates a layer of like a blurry effect. So you can kind of then flow from this dark all the way into this light. And I can sort of, I mean, you can hold it and do circles too, but I find just twisting it, you're going to get a different look than if you erase in circles. Okay, does that help you? All right, I will give you your sloth back. Who else wants help with their picture? All right, Arjun, bring yours up. So you guys can be drawing right now too. You can be working at the same time. Not at the exact moment. All right, which part of your picture do you want help with?
Like the context of the lines.
The context of the lines?
Well, like the line.
So you mean the wrinkles?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a good example. So Arjun's picture has a lot of wrinkles. So right down here in this area, we can see in the belly, there's a lot of stuff going on. So I'm going to, once again, tissue rub is my go-to. So I'm going to tissue rub a layer. All right, and I'm going to go back to a really soft pencil, a 4B, a 6B, an 8B, one of those would be good. And I'm not going to make my marks really dark right now, even though this is pretty black in the picture, because if I make it really black and it's in the slightly wrong place, it will be harder to put it back in the right place without it being really noticeable. So I'm going to look at sort of the shape, and these wrinkles are wiggly. So when you make your lines, if you wiggle them as you're going up, and I like, if you notice, I did a continuous line. I went up and I came back down the same line. And that's also gonna help with my wrinkles here. So I'm gonna be working on this area right in here. So don't be afraid to go up and back down your path here. Now, right now, it doesn't really look much like wrinkles. It just looks like a... It doesn't look much, it looks more like a bush or a tree at the moment, right? So this is where I would take my blending stub, and that's why I wanted to use a soft pencil, and that's why I went up and down the line, so it's actually a little thicker than I want it to be. And I'm gonna just rub the line that I made, and I'm gonna try to blend it into the gray areas next to it. And I'm gonna do that on both sides of the line. The thing with wrinkles is you have a really dark and you tend to have a really light area. In order to get that, you have to have nice smooth gradient on both sides of those, so they have to fade into each other. So that's what I'm gonna do right now with these lines. And see how it's softening quite a bit? It's not looking as harsh as it does over on this side. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna continue this. So, and I'm rubbing fairly hard. If you guys wanna know, I'm using a good amount of pressure. It's so important to be able to use pressure in these drawings. All right. Okay, so now it's sort of shaded in here, and I'm gonna need to start thinking about adding my lights in. So I'm gonna use the eraser pencil, and I'm gonna look at where in this image is the light. And the light tends, on wrinkles, the light source is kind of like on your, so like on my arm, usually you can see there's a shadow right in here, and there tends to be a shadow right in here, and the light is on the top part of my arm, right? That's what makes my arm look like it's turning in space. That is a three-dimensional object. If I was to draw my arm and I wanted it to look round, I would shade on this side and I would shade on this side. It's kind of the same for wrinkles. When you want wrinkles to really stand out, for the most part, and you'll see there's a few exceptions, like this over here, the light is at the edge of the wrinkle. But for the most part, the light is in the middle of the wrinkle. So you want to look at and draw sort of that line coming down the middle of the wrinkle. You know, and some of the wrinkles are different shapes, so you have to kind of look at what is the middle of that shape. So here this one has at the very edge. Okay, and it's not quite wrinkly yet, so I'm going to come back to the blending stub, and I'm going to blend now where the light and the dark meet. I'm going to blend. And that's going to help it fade into each other. And I'm going to use very soft pressure now. Very soft with my blending. Okay, so I'm just blending the edges where the two values meet. So when you hear me say blend the edges where the two values meet, that means look at the edge like it's a line and fade them into each other. Now by doing this, I might need to go back in a couple of the spots and add some more highlights again. So I might need to go in and brighten a couple of spots, and I'm going to just sort of dab that in because I want it to look wrinkly too. So I'm going to kind of come in wiggly. And then I'm going to very softly add a little bit more gray tone with my actual pencils. I'm going to come in now and I'm going to look at the direction of all this and bring in some of this texture. And to do some of this texture, I could use a different one of my shading techniques. So remember when we did the scribbles? So I could do little swirly scribbles as part of my shading, and that will also help create the wiggly and the feeling that this is a wrinkle. So all of those techniques that we were doing on the technique chart can be used in your animal drawing depending on what makes sense for your actual drawing. So while it's kind of abstract, because I just sort of took this wrinkled group out of the middle of an elephant, so there is going to be some strange abstraction to it. Can you sort of see the effect of wrinkles here? Obviously, it would look a little better if, we had the rest of the elephant attached to this, but, it is what it is. Does that help you, Sir Arjun? All right. Does anybody else want me to demonstrate on their picture? Thank you, Carlos. Anybody else? Okay, so it looks like you guys are all feeling pretty good with what's happening, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording. I am going to post this recording on Schooloop, and then I'm also going to post every class period. I'm going to do this exact same lecture and demonstration. So you might check, because maybe you didn't want to talk to me today, but you might see that somebody else had a similar question to what you would have asked, and then you can see what the solution to that would be. Of course, I will be coming around and helping you in person, so it's not that you just have to watch a video. This is just another option for you if I'm busy helping somebody and you feel you need my immediate attention. So when that happens, we'll actually have the Chromebooks out, so if or if you want to use your phone, you can, for looking those up. All right, fabulous.